Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. This is our third episode, and thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We have a great episode planned for you. We're going to reach into the mailbag, and yes, even if we are new, doesn't mean we still don't get hate mail. So we're going to reach into that mailbag in just a few minutes and pull out some goodies and have a conversation about them. We're also going to talk about climate change for a science segment tonight. And we're going to talk with Jennifer Bean from the Michigan CFI. And last, we're going to hit gun control and mass shootings because we just can't put that topic down. But before we go any farther, I got to introduce my awesome, fantastic, super spendicious co-host, Mr. Chris Hanna. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, man. A little tired. Got a new daughter under the roof here at the house, so I'm a little bit stressed out, a little bit tired, but we're still going on, man. The show must go on. We got a great segment. I had the science segment all researched and piled up, so it's gonna be pretty intense. I'm expecting a bit more hate mail from the mailbag because this first batch of hate mail, man, I don't understand where it came from because we don't have much content out there, but whatever. Facebook and internet's always going for it.
And you think I post in all these groups, right? We have these groups. We do the Twitter thing, we the bumper thing. We it's just all over the place. So I get emails and I get, Facebook notifications and people's like, hey, I disagree with you and this is why. So we thought, hey, what the fuck not? And see, look, I'm making the episode explicit within the first 30, under 30 minutes. See, we've already hit the explicit tag. But you guys got to hang out with us because we wanted to do the mailbag segment, and we'll get into that in just a minute because I think that's important. And I think it's important that we look at, as skeptics, which is the name of our damn show, right? We have to look at ourselves and go, okay, maybe we said something irrational. I'll admit I'm not the most genius individual of all times. But, we have to look at ourselves. So we gotta laugh too sometimes. But before we go any farther, Chris, you just had a daughter, which is awesome. That's amazing. You're a brand new father. I would push the clap button if we were able to record that way and be like clap, clap, clap. But we don't have that on here, so it's too cheesy. But tell us.
Well, your little sound effect is just as good, without question.
See, we do everything for you guys. But tonight is really special because this is only the second night your daughter's been home, correct?
Yeah, well, we got home pretty late yesterday, but we're still at the first 24 hours in the house. The hospital did an amazing job, though. She was born on Monday, so we've been just running around. I'm learning a million things in a day right now, but pretty. And sweet.
Shit, I've got a 13, a 12, a 6, and a 4-year-old, so I'm already past my baby days.
Yeah, man, you are so far ahead of me in that one. I mean, you're gonna have everyone out and done. What? 10, 15 years, they're going to be gone. You're going to be house empty nest and all that game.
Yeah. And we figured the way we because we had them so close together that if, hey, we want more kids, well, there's adoption. We can adopt kids. And if we really want to do that, we have that option still.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, we wanted to try and see how it was. We got married and then we got pregnant within a month or so. It was time to 10 years of dating. Yeah, I know everyone always gives me hell. 10 years, how the heck is that possible? But, distance, time, she went to school in a different place and a different state and stuff. So once she moved in, we had time together and we said, okay, let's get married, start a family, do it all at once. And so this is the 10th month of our marriage and 9 months.
She's been pregnant.
9 months of that time she's been pregnant, yeah.
Well, at least we know the old junk still works, I guess.
Old, come on, man. I'm not that old.
Well, enough about your daughter, as awesome as she is. And Chris promises he will post pictures on the Cellar Door Skeptics podcast wall for you guys to see. I think I posted one already without your permission, but you'll get some more awesome ones where she's not, sitting in her hospital gown and stuff like that for us in the next couple of weeks. But what we want to do is we want to have a mailbag conversation. And I know it's kind of cliche. A lot of podcasts do this, and we won't do this every week, so you don't have to worry. If you don't like it, you can fast forward 15 minutes and get through this. But if you want to hear some humor, if you want to hear me make fun of myself, you might as well. So we're going to start with the first one. The first one, I had an individual contact me and say, hey, they were really confused about episode 1, where we talked about time travel. And I went back and listened to it and basically kind of thought about it. And I said, oh, maybe this person has some points. So let me read a little bit about some of their feedback. They said, one thing I'd like to address about that segment is that you have a trouble comprehending relativity, specific to your statement of why one would even bother traveling into the future if it's going to take a toll on your body and kill you. So this individual thinks that given the scale of everything in the universe, that if you could travel forward 5 billion years and it would only cost you a couple years, why would that not be worth it? You could go see the end of the universe if you wanted. You could travel 10 years forward, only lose a year off your life, and find a cure for the cancer that you have. So they make a valid point, and so maybe I was misunderstanding you, Chris. So let's rehash that for a few seconds. If I were to travel back forward in time, and let's say I want to go 1,000 years into the future because I want to see us as, biological, technical, machine humans. How many years of my life would I lose to that 5,000 years?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that we talked about. We don't have a very solid, consistent number for, okay, if you travel at 99.99999% the speed of light, how long would it take for you to experience maybe 1 year, and how much time would pass on Earth, or vice versa? How much time traveling at that speed would it take of you moving that the Earth would experience 1,000 years? And the number isn't very consistent. So we do know that if you go really fast, you experience what you would experience now. We all experience time in relative to ourselves. So if we experience 1 year in that spaceship going that speed, you age 1 year, everything is 1 year for you, and then Earth is what would experience, the universe itself actually is what would experience that sped up faster time. So it could be a year, it could be half a year, depending on how close you are going to the speed of light, which obviously changes. It's relative. So the closer to the speed of light, the less time you have to be moving for time to go even further on Earth. So we don't really know for sure. That's really what I'm trying to say, though. We do know that it would take a pretty good chunk of time to get 5,000 years, but that's again another thing. We've never been able to do this kind of experiment on a large scale.
Yeah. And so, okay, so fair enough. So if that's the case, and see, maybe that's why I disagreed, because I just can't comprehend, and maybe that makes me stupid, but I can't comprehend traveling a couple thousand years into the future to get a cure for the cancer that you have. And, it only taking a year off your life. I didn't get that out of the conversation. But one of the bigger things, something that we need to look at too, is what if you go too far? So we've seen Futurama. Everybody's seen Futurama.
I was just going to say that.
What happens when you go too far? So do you have an answer for that? Is there any research or science that goes into that aspect?
No, it's not so much as what happens if you go too far. It's the question of, if you go too far, can you go back? And that's one of the things that we have basically found out. You can't go back. According to the way we understand physics now, we would have to have faster than speed of light travel. We'd have to be able to use wormholes. We'd have to be able to use singularities, things of that nature to really, really supersede it. And the math says it's there, but we physically can't do it. Our experiments can't handle that kind of massive gravity, that kind of intense speed of light, faster than the speed of light. Obviously, if we could do that, essentially it says through relativity that we could go back in time, but we don't know. And a lot of people, as Neil deGrasse Tyson said in a quote, they suspect that in the future we will find out that we can't go back in time. They will find out that there are laws of physics that prevent us from going back in time. That's just expectation or postulation at the moment, but that's kind of where I lean to.
Yeah. So I'll admit I was wrong. If we go 1,000 years and it only takes a year off my life, fair enough. I even if I had disastrous cancer where I was given a year to 2 years to live, I would probably still take the chance of traveling forward in time to get the cure. I probably would do that. So,
yeah, there's the other issue. The double edge of that sword is everyone you know, everyone you've ever loved, everyone who I mean, even the youngest children, grandchildren in your life would all have passed away long, long, long ago. So there's that. You're going to be alive, but you're going to be in a society, in a world where you are basically in a relic of time, and nobody you know will be there. So there's that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So let's move on to the next mailbag topic, if you will. And so this was just this was from the first episode. And I posted, I don't remember in what group it was, but it says, we talk about Fear Factory, Bible verses, crazy stuff, and Christopher Tanner, and then Bernie Sanders. And so what we do is says, this guy posts, and he goes, already misrepresentation in your title. And I was like, all right, why is that? And he goes, because my belief does not advocate fear. Now, I don't know what that means. He stopped responding to me after this, right? We never had a further dialogue.
He was a Christian, and he was saying that his belief does not advocate fear? Or
That's my guess. Honestly,
okay.
I'm not 100% sure about that. It posted in a mixed group. You know, it was definitely a mixed group. I like to go into those groups, especially now that our title doesn't say atheist in it, because I'm hoping we can get some people that will listen and they'll go, okay, hey, I don't agree with you, but I'm glad that somebody's talking about it. And
yeah, that's fine.
And so I don't know. So did we, on the first episode, did we talk about religion being harmful? I'm pretty sure we did.
Well, we just naturally have a tendency to kind of lean that way. That's where our natural bias are. That's where our perspective, our biases are right now. We're atheists, open and clear. We are skeptical, and through our skepticism, we found that there's probably, actually more than probable, like a heavy probability that there really isn't some kind of supernatural, anthropomorphized God that runs the show, as you know, our major monotheisms have. And that kind of comes out in what we say. My guess is this person is probably making some assumptions in that direction as well. I don't really see the tie, and since they didn't get into the conversation, that seems just like a little troll move that we should just probably ignore. If this person wanted to come back and explain it, that's awesome, but that's just a pass for me.
So, individual, you know who you are. You have RP as your initials, and I won't say your full name because I don't want to air your name, I guess. I don't want to give you any more credit than you have. But if you would like to have a conversation with us, we have a 15-minute segment that we'll do on one of our shows, having a conversation with you. Hell, we'll even let you talk for over half that time. So if you're listening, you want to continue to try and tell us why religion is not harmful, hey, bring it on. Let's have a conversation about it. So if we were to open the mailbag and one more time, and we don't want to spend too long into this segment, but one more time, we had somebody that's kind of been a fan of the old show, Heretical Minds and Atheist Analysis, somebody that's kind of followed us for the past, I think 6 months now. And this individual sent me an email, and he says, I listened to your little intro for the new podcast, and Chris Hanna talked about a nation where we have respect and honor for everybody. He feels that this is extremely misleading and ridiculous. And he says, why would your show respect something that is completely ludicrous? I'm assuming he's talking about the Christians' beliefs. And he says, I think that saying you guys are going to respect all is really irresponsible and a straight up lie. So, but before you respond to this, because I'm going to let you respond, and then I'm going to, have a conversation about it. I actually have the clip from the first thing that we ever did. You want to hear it, Chris?
Go for it, man.
All right, so here we go. Here's the clip from Chris Hanna from our podcast number 0, Introductions to the Podcast.
My name is Chris Hanna. I will be one of the hosts on the Cellar Door Skeptics podcast. As a handicapped American, my sin of choice, deafness. I write as Dephilosophy all over the blogosphere. You can find my content on the Cellar Door Skeptics blog, as well as dephilosophy.wordpress.com. I am planning on using the Cellar Door Skeptics podcast as a launch platform to making real change in the real world. My goal with this show is to educate people in science, as I am a mechanical engineer, and I also want to get armchair activists out into the real world helping people and making a difference. It's time we do more than share, click like, and write witty jokes and memes. I want to make a difference in this world, and I think someone like my friend Christopher Tanner can help me do just that. We will be based in the Grand Rapids area, hopefully making small changes here and hopefully spreading further and further out into the areas around West Michigan. I look forward to being a part of this awesome team, and we will have some incredible guests on the show. So please, I implore you, take a look at our show, our content, and the things that we plan on doing in the future will surprise you. They will challenge you. They may even anger you. But we are doing this with a hope that in the future we can truly make this country a secular and all-encompassing place for anyone and everyone willing to treat everyone else with respect and honor. Thanks for listening to my little blurb. I am Chris Hanna, also known as Duff Philosophy, and I will see you soon.
So, you heard that, right? You were paying attention.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I wasn't sleeping. Although I will say I was speaking a little slow. I didn't know that was going to be, I don't know, played as much as it was. I probably would have sped it up a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not a professional. So
not yet. So at the end, you said you want to have respect and honor for all. I don't think that's what you said.
Well, that's what it sounds like what I said. Basically, the gist of the entire thing is I want to go into everything unbiased, if possible, as unbiased as possible. If you think about it, if you go into something thinking someone's ridiculous, as the mailbag said, you're starting off with a side that there's no possible way that this person's going to have any kind of validity in their argument. You're going in just already shut out. And skeptical minds, we really want to just, as best we can, go in and say, okay, what is the argument? What are the parts that I like? What are the parts that I don't like? I know this kind of thing takes way too much time for some crazy arguments, but that's part of the optimist in me. It's part of the guy who likes to read utopian science fiction instead of dystopian science fiction. I like the idea that we could get honor and respect in all places where you deserve it, and to start off with it, really, because once somebody does something to lose that respect and honor towards what they're saying, then we can go to that, you're ridiculous, I'm moving on. But I don't think we should start with ridiculous or absurdities in our assumptions and then listen to someone's argument. That's kind of what I was trying to say.
Yeah. And see, I don't know. I'll be honest. I kind of disagree with you in some aspects. I don't disagree that we should respect people. I think we should respect people. But I don't think anybody's beliefs are worthy of respect, personally. Not even my own. You shouldn't respect my beliefs just because I talk on the radio, or I guess it's not a radio, the podcast. You know, you shouldn't respect my beliefs because I am me. You should look into my beliefs, research them, and decide for yourself whether there's something that is worthwhile supporting. And so, to a point, I understand, his argument that, really, we should not respect. And as skeptics, we shouldn't just accept their beliefs. And he also included a link to a YouTube video that I'll go ahead and throw up in the description as well. So anybody else wants to watch it, they can. But for me, it's not ludicrous what you said. That I disagree with. But I do disagree with you a little bit, and maybe it's just a wording thing.
I'm thinking it's semantics, really.
And maybe it is. I don't agree with, I can be honest, I do not agree with respecting somebody's beliefs. I don't respect Christians' beliefs. I'm sorry, I don't. The only part of their beliefs I respect is that when they actually want to help humanity. I can respect that. I can accept that there's some parts of the Bible that, I guess I won't say tell awesome things, but they do tell some great golden rule stances. But the majority of it is shit. And how people use it is even worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's an argument that could go on and on and on. It's semantics. It's what we think is good, what's good and bad about different religions, things. I understand what you're saying, and that's kind of the area that I'm in. I like the idea of respect. I can actually give people respect that are Christians, that are Jews, that are Hindus, that are Muslims, that are Buddhists. But it's basically a level of respect that if you don't infringe on my rights, I won't infringe on yours.
But do you actually
So
respect
you
their
can have-
beliefs, though? Honestly,
Well, it's not like a respect directly towards, it's the person. I mean, the whole, because if you think about it, we always talk about your beliefs being like this separate thing from you. Like, your personality is so intertwined with your belief system that you can't really respect someone and not be some of what they believe. Like, you can't separate into pieces and chunks like that. That's not the way humanity and the mind works. It's so intertwined that if you think someone's a good person and they may be a Christian, you're kind of respecting their beliefs a little bit when it comes to that. Because it's not like, I like you, but I hate your Christianic beliefs. That's such a tough
but I don't.
thing, and
Okay,
I don't
hold
think
on.
it's black and white like that.
I don't believe their beliefs make them the good person, though. I don't think it's their belief system. I think it's internal. It's a decision they've made. It's how they've been brought up. It's how they choose to interpret the world, and whether they look through a Christian rose-colored glasses or black atheist glasses. To me, I don't think that's really the kicker here.
Yeah, it's not really the reason they're a good person. Like, let's say this is just someone that you meet that's a good person. You never had any problems with them. They do good things, and then I know a couple people that I interact with regularly online. They're incredibly progressive Christians, and it's like, yeah, I think you're wrong, but I can respect you as a decent person who doesn't try to push your beliefs and your stuff into the government and things like that. So it's once again, it's back to my more optimistic utopian idea, like trying to find a middle, because it's like the Hitchens perspective that if he could ban religion, he wouldn't, because he doesn't think that we can separate it from ourselves. There's no way to just simply get rid of it. It's innate in humanity, this need for something like that. And so, I don't know, we're talking philosophy now, so.
We've lost you. You got bored. You said Christopher Hitchens, and I perked back up, but...
Well, no, I mean, it's a great argument, but I mean, for a mailbag response on this one, yes, we don't respect someone who's running around being a conspiracy theorist, crazy person. Like, we don't respect that. When they come in and they say, "This is what I think," and you go, "Okay, what do you think?" I will respect your position to say something like this, and then once I get more information from you, then I decide whether or not you're ridiculous or not. I don't think you're ridiculous coming in. Yeah, whatever, man. It's tired. I need my sleeps. I got pooped on like 20 minutes ago, man.
And it wasn't from the mailbag. It was from the kid. So
I think it was both.
You think it was both? All right. Well, cool. We got to get out of this segment. We got to move on to something else. But thank you guys. If you guys have more responses, make sure you send them to cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. We'll take all your mailbag responses. We'll probably do this once a month, once every 2 months, something like that. Whenever we get good, juicy ones, we'll pull it out. But if you have questions, if you want something covered on the science segment, how about that? Send the request to us and just say, "Hey, Chris Tanner, ignore this. This is for Chris Hanna because he's a lot smarter than you." And what we'll do is I'll make sure I get it to him because he never checks the email, and we'll tackle any science segment that you send our way. We'll put it that way. And if I have to, I'll get a guest to explain it if it's over Chris's head.
Sounds good.
Thank you guys. Make sure you stick around because in just 2 seconds, probably 30 seconds, we'll be right back. Stay tuned for more Cellar Door Skeptics.
This is C-Web from ParanormalSkepticAcademy.com, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. Jose.
This is Paul Sading, the creator and host of Atheist Apocalypse and Coronify Me, and I'm looking for your help. I suffer from depression. Each year, we lose 39,000 lives to suicide, just in the U.S. That's the size of a small city every single year. Worldwide, we lose about 1 million people per year to suicide. Out of the Darkness Walks is an event held by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, who is a field leader in the fight against suicide by funding research, offering educational programs, advocating for public policy, and supporting those affected by suicide. They hold regular events, one of which will be held in Seattle at the end of the month. I'm participating in it because this issue is very important to me, and I'm hoping it's important enough to you to support as well. If you believe in funding mental health prevention and educational programs, this is your opportunity. Please help me. I've set up a very modest team goal of $150 for this walk. I urge you to go over to afsp.donordrive.com. In the top right corner, you'll see a search box. type in Paul Sating, Sating, and you can make a donation to my team. No donation is too small. Every little bit helps. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. And thank you most of all for your support, helping those who feel like they have no way out, and for being the change that you want to see in the world. Peace.
Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. I'm Chris Hanna, also here with my awesome co-host, Christopher Tanner. We're going to be running the science segment here in a few seconds. We got a big poll from the Guardian website. It's about the 97% versus the 3%, just how much global warming are humans really causing. And it's a cool little debate thing. And Tanner, you said you really like that debate aspect of this, but do you think this is the kind of topic you can just do two people talking about?
Well, I don't think you can ever do just two people talking about it, Chris, to be honest with you. I think we need more voices. We need more people having a conversation. But the best part about this article is that they pose the whole article as a debate. It's not like somebody in a third person doing commentary. It's an actual debate. And if you know me, I like debates. That's kind of one of my things. It's a shtick. The stick? I don't know how you say that. It's a stick of mine, right? And I really like debating. And I think for this topic, global warming, because it is such a hot topic, is something that, to me, should be discussed more. And in a minute, I know you're going to give me 100 million facts, and you're going to be like, hey, look at all of this. There's 99% of people that believe in global warming and 1% that don't, or I think it's actually 4%. But you're going to give all those statistics, and those are great. But we have to actually sit down and look at the topics. And we have to go, okay, well, just because there's a consensus doesn't mean we don't have to have a discussion about it. And just because you and I have one discussion doesn't mean somebody else shouldn't have a discussion about it. And I understand that at some point people get sick of trying to have that discussion, but it still needs to be had. And we still need to continue to have it. And the best part about this is it's based on science, right? And what happens with science?
Peer review removes the garbage.
Exactly. So the best part about this whole thing is that even if we continue to have this debate or this conversation, science just keeps getting smarter, and it keeps giving us more information that we have at our disposal. So while it may widen that gap between the 99 and the 1%, it's going to continue to provide information and facts. And the best part is somebody will learn something, even if it's from you and me.
Definitely. Well, I mean, we're not really going to be the people doing the teaching here. This is kind of us, or mostly me, and you're gonna kind of back me up. Hopefully, you'll probably find something to pick on me a little bit.
I always do.
Like this, I'm just trying to relay information, like good information that I have found just in my random searches throughout the interwebs. And this site, The Guardian, is also always a great news site, but this article particularly, it was written by a. Let's see if I can bring the guy's name up because he's awesome. I'm not sure how to say the last name. It's Dana Nucitelli. But it was written on
Nutella? Isn't that like it's like peanut butter? Is it?
No, this guy is not a nutty spread for your toast. Well, it was written on Monday, September 15th, 2014. So it's got a little bit of age to it. But what this article is kind of there's a 96 to 97% consensus to the scientific community, and there's a 2 to 4% dissent in the scientific community that humanity has been the dominant cause of global warming since 1950. There's two people in the article, Gavin Schmidt, who is from NASA and represents the consensus of climate experts, arguing that humans have been the dominant cause, and there's a woman named Judith Curry from Georgia Tech representing the opinions of the 2 to 4% that say that humans could be responsible for less than half of that warming. So the two positions here are we are the major cause and we are responsible for less than half. We're responsible for some, but not as much as the scientific consensus is going through. So Curry she speaks for groups like the Marshall Institute. It's a right-wing think tank that has spread misinformation about the dangers of smoking, ozone depletion, acid rain, DDT, and now climate change. So, and another group is the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So it's a fossil fuel funded right-wing think tank. So, I mean, right out of the bat, Tanner, these people are funding this stuff, and we've already got a little bit of a scary, because conservatives, they kind of have a tendency to pick something they like and just try to ignore the science. I mean, can you think of any other groups that have been doing this? You were mentioning something, the IRC, was it?
Oh, yeah. That happens all the time. And I guess the IRC is more of a minority, I'll be honest. I mean, they're not a majority in the Public Party. They fit more into the Tea Party aspect, but the IRC is the Institution for Creationist Research. So it's ICR, maybe.
ICR,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I'm wrong. Look at that. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Tanner's wrong. So the ICR is the main scientific quotations needed.
Like a resource.
Yes.
Yeah.
That the AIG, Answers in Genesis group, uses. They're basically the same thing, except for one actually has scientific degrees. The other one just is full of shit and claims they do. But
well, one of the things that I've seen on those groups is they have a degree, but it may not be in the area that they're communicating on. So they may have a doctorate in philosophy, but they're talking about geology. So that's an expert position that they're not really qualified to be talking about.
Yeah. And so you're right. Yes. And so I'm not going to tell you they're not qualified. I'm going to tell you they're using science incorrectly. So, for instance, they're taking like radiometric dating and they're trying to debunk it. And they do a good convincing job if you don't know what you're talking about. So for the average person who doesn't spend hours researching radioactive dating, you would look at that and you go, oh, that kind of makes sense. But if you do any research and you actually look into what radioactive dating is and understand carbon dating, you take a mix of all those, plus you look at the evolutionary process, you would understand that they're full of shit. Just flat out. Within an hour, you can go, oh, I should never have read that article. I feel stupider because I did. And it's a propaganda machine. And so that's what I was going to ask you. So you have this lady, right? And you have to have both sides of the debate. You have to have that. Mm-hmm. Without that, it's not fair. And I feel bad for that lady, especially because she's on the non-consensus side of society with that. But without that other voice, we would never know, hey, you know what? Maybe we should check into what we believe. And to me, this lady is necessary. I feel bad for her, right? But she's necessary because without her, I wouldn't think twice about my position. So this article is great, and you should all check it out, and we'll post links in the description, because what this article does is it gives you both positions. Whether you agree with one or not doesn't matter. You should read this, because in a second, we're going to go debunk some of it, because that's what we do. We're skeptics, right? But without both positions, you can't honestly say, hey, I've made an educated decision. You can only say I've made a cognitive biased decision. Once you educate yourself, you go out and do the research, you can at least say, hey, I'm a little more educated, I understand the arguments, and she's wrong because of this, and this, which is what we're about to attempt.
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite books of all time is Letters to a Young Contrarian from Christopher Hitchens. In there, multiple times throughout the book, it says if you have a position or a perspective or a thought or an idea, if it is never contested, then it's never really proven how strong it is. A really good idea or any kind of argument needs to be contested. It's part of a natural. It should always be questioned. It should always be just push to see how true it is. And if it's never tested, then you run into stuff like you just mentioned there a moment ago with the cognitive bias and the confirmation bias and stuff. So these kind of groups, they perpetuate that echo chamber, that little bubble where you never really get a good quality discussion between what the majority of the data is. They grab a little thing and they latch onto it, which we'll talk about in a second. So this entire exchange, from the article on The Guardian, they talk about the exchange, but the actual debate between Schmidt and Curry can be found on Real Climate. It's a blog run by climate scientists. It's a quality, and the big thing is the quality of the resources is the clear indicator of a strength of an argument, and that's the whole author's point on this from The Guardian, is they both present their arguments, and the strength of their data, the strength of their resources is what gives them either a higher chance or more probability of being correct. And so for Schmidt, the guy from NASA, what he used is the most recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And what this is, it's a summary, okay, of everything, the latest and the greatest climate science research. So there is no better single source, no more conclusive, wide, broad, and complete source on climate change. And there's a cool little image on here that we wanted to go in and talk about. If you go to the article at The Guardian, you can check the link. We'll have included here. There is a black bar that says observed heat that has been just measured, really, from absorbed global surface warming that has been observed. And then underneath it is a green bar.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you because you're throwing bars out and colors out, and I'm going, fuck, hold on. I know. And we ain't got it. We ain't got an image. So let's explain to the audience what that bar means. So, like, you know what it means. You did the research. You understand the concept behind it. So tell everybody exactly what that bar is.
The first bar, or the first number, is basically it's the observed global surface warming that has been measured since 1951 to 2010. So this is what they measured. This is when they looked on the thermometer, they averaged out all the temperatures, and this is what they got, the observed increase. And then the next one.
So hold on. So the observed increase, so they're not saying what caused it. They're just saying we're observing something. We're seeing a change, right?
Yeah. What this data does what this image does is pure data. So it's a bar graph, basically. So the observed data, this is the number that we measured. And then there's the greenhouse gases one, the next one down. They measured that, and they got a number for that. And that is the amount of heating that has come from the greenhouse gases. Mm-hmm. And then the next one down is an orange one, but that orange one is it's the combination between the next one down, which is the yellow one. So essentially, what we have is the aerosols and the greenhouse gases, which counteract each other. And we did a nice little thing, and Tanner was telling me that I got all super crazy tangent nerdy a minute ago, but I'm going to try to do a quick explanation. The greenhouse gases are there's water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and NO2. That's what the Volkswagen cars, they were lying about. That's like this incredibly massive problem that they have now. It's a greenhouse gas, and ozone, obviously, the one that everyone knows, which is oxygen. O3 basically is 3 oxygen molecule or atoms. So those things hold in heat. They act as heat insulation in our atmosphere. They keep the heat around the Earth. And then there are aerosols, which are essentially chemicals that float around, gases that float around, and what they do is they destroy the ozone layer. They rip it all apart. And so when we add carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, it keeps heat in. And the ozone, obviously, is there too. And so we're keeping heat in with that. But when the aerosols destroy the ozone, we're removing the ozone layer, and that lets out heat. So you have kind of you have increased heat from the greenhouse gases, and you reduced heat from the aerosols, but the ozone layer gets destroyed, and without that, we don't have protection from the sun's radiation. So it's a bad thing.
So
overall.
Basically, so to me, and let's take the nerdy Chris science terms and turn it into layman's terms, because that's the only thing I understand. So to me, it's almost kind of like if you had 2 pieces of bread, right? And they're holding the sandwich, and they make the sandwich taste good. But if you start taking, and the sandwich starts heating up, right, it's going to heat that bread up, and it moves the molecules around in the bread, and it starts to make it a little bit mushy. So you're like, oh shit, I don't want a mushy sandwich, right? So I'm going to stick it in the fridge, and I'm going to cool it off. And then you stick it in the fridge, you cool it off, and you pull it out, and you're like, okay, well, hold on a second. It's a little too cold, so I'm going to put it back on the counter because I got to eat it, and then it keeps warming itself up. And what it's doing is, instead of making the sandwich in a perfect state, it's taking that sandwich and basically ruining it, so that no matter whether it's hot or cold, it's going to taste like shit, and it's going to screw you over in the end, because you're probably going to get salmonella from it, because you should just microwave the damn thing to begin with.
Well, yeah, dude. So, I mean, the hot and cold, we can't act as like these Earth controllers where we just kind of we put a whole bunch of bad stuff in, but that bad stuff's in there, so let's put this other bad stuff in to let out some of that heat that we're keeping, because the thing that's getting beat up on this is the ozone layer. And we all remember that hole in the ozone that became really popular when they discovered it in the 90s, I believe it was. Well, that hole has been reduced. We fixed it. We've kind of helped it out. But when we use those aerosols, it destroys the ozone layer. So the greenhouse gases keep in the heat, but we destroy the ozone with the aerosols. The ozone protects us from the sun's radiation, so we have to have that. And so if we keep the ozone and we keep dumping the carbon dioxide and the nitrous oxide, we're going to increase heat, because we're not using those aerosols anymore. So we're essentially buffering up the insulation that holds in that heat, and that's the climate change. That is the greenhouse, or the global warming that we're talking about. But anyways, the balance between the greenhouse gases and the aerosols negate some of the warmth from the greenhouse gases, and that plus minus ratio is more than the observed heat increase that we've had. And so what we believe is some of that variation is from internal variation in the water, in the atmosphere, or in the surface of the Earth, from cycles in the heat and cold, because obviously the Earth is still a molten rock around a big molten iron core. So there's variation there, but that variation is so small that what they did when they did the math, when they do all the numbers, that we are responsible, from the best they can tell, for 110%. It says Schmidt illustrated his key point in a figure. That's another figure in the article, and it says that the curve is centered around 110%. And this is the statistics. You can look up this website, and it'll explain some of the stuff that they do as far as the probability function and stuff. We won't get into that, but like these are the findings for the cumulative effects of the entirety of the scientific consensus. That's basically the biggest point here. Is we're looking at a solid 100% that is human responsibility.
See,
and then if
I got to interrupt you again, but to me, it doesn't matter whether it's 100% or not 100%, right? So to me, if we're causing even 10% of this, we shouldn't say, hey, let's just forget about it. I mean, I don't give a flying fuck if it's 100% or 10%. We should be examining this and going, hold on a second. We're causing some of this. And maybe, I know you said it, but just to kind of reiterate it, it's not that these two are counteracting. And you know, how many times have you heard an argument, right, where they're saying, well, look, 1 year we're this and the next year we're that, and they're opposites, so climate change doesn't exist. Well, your example is great. It's perfect, right? It makes sense.
Yeah, two negatives don't make a positive.
Exactly. And so that's the big point, right? We're seeing one side increase, the other side decrease, and yes, we're seeing an offset, but that offset isn't positive. That offset is fucking negative. And that's the biggest problem, is that, there's an offset. And so to the person that just looks at the outset and doesn't actually get into the research, they're not actually looking at what's really happening. They're just seeing an offset. They're just looking at the statistical numbers on the outset. They're not digging into the data. They're not realizing that we're not just only tearing away the fabric, we're adding the wrong fabric back to try and cover it up. And at some point, it's going to backfire on us. Probably not in our lifetime, probably not in our kids' lifetime, but definitely we're going to see a bigger change, at least in our grandkids' lifetime, if we stay the same course and do not change.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy, using the fabric and the canvases, replacing one that's good with one that doesn't work or one that's bad. I really like that idea. So, okay, we've kind of gone over what Schmidt and the findings for the world have gotten, basically. And so now let's talk about Curry, the woman from Georgia Tech. She says she disagrees with the expert consensus on this issue. And Schmidt says that her arguments are rather muddled and confused. She says that there's uncertainty regarding the contribution of internal variability. So that's that fluctuation in the ocean that we were talking about. There's a thing called what is it called? It's the fluctuations in the water, and I'm not seeing the answer. We got a big chart here, but anyways, I'll go back into it in a second. I'm sure I'll remember what it is, but it says the 6 decades from the 1950s, those fluctuations, the positive and negative phases of the ocean cycles, they tend to cancel themselves out. Since we're looking at such a big time period, that all those positives and negatives, that variation, it cancels itself out, and so the internal variability does not have a large influence on long-term temperatures. So it's 0.65 degrees Celsius is the global surface warming that we've seen since 1950, and they're saying that internal variability is 0.1 degrees Celsius. So it could be from 0.55 to 0.75 degrees Celsius for the actual numbers. Those are still terrible numbers. Like, there's nothing good that can come from that. They estimate that just a few degrees could be catastrophic towards a ton of life in our world. So, I mean, just a 0.65 has changed a ton of stuff. So what Curry also references is a report written by Nick Lewis from the anti-climate policy think tank Global Warming Policy Foundation. Now, these guys are like those two think tanks that we had before, they're very conservative. And it says that climate report argues that climate sensitivity is toward the lower end of that estimated range, that plus or minus 0.1 C. And the report is biased towards Lewis's preferred approach to finding poor excuses to reject many of the methods that arrive at higher climate estimates. And there's stuff in here that they give links. It says right here, recent research has identified flaws in Lewis's approach that explain why it incorrectly yields the lowest climate sensitivity estimates. So what this article did was they get, okay, here's their arguments, and then here is a place where here and here and here where they've been debunked or proven wrong. And once again, when we run into stuff like that, Tanner, how do you continue once your one thing, the only thing you've got, is broken? I've never been able to understand that, how people can continue on once the only thing they got left is busted out. What do you think they're doing with that?
It's a cognitive bias. Unfortunately, it's almost kind of like we see in some of the religious spectrum, right? And I don't want to say we don't have cognitive biases, because I do. I know I do. I know you do. I mean, you're cognitively biased to certain things I disagree with as well, such as certain musical tastes that I just laugh at you, and pictures of yourself in the background. But,
vanity is my sin of choice.
I know you said that last time, but the problem is the cognitive bias should not be in science. And I'll admit that I am not cognitively biased to evolution. People like to say that. They're like, you're an atheist, you don't want there to be a God. I do want there to be a God at some point, right? I would love for there to be an easy answer to everything. There's not, though. There's not an easy answer to this. And so to me, the evolution works out. And I've said before that I'm not going to debate evolution. And I know this isn't about evolution, but I've said I won't debate it with people anymore because I'm sick of fucking debating you, because the science shows right. But at some point, we do have to break down and have that conversation. It's the same with global warming. I get sick of having this conversation. Now, you brought a lot more light, and I'll be honest, until you and I had this conversation and we did the research, I didn't understand the difference between the two, why the two climates canceled each other out somewhat, and why we didn't see a larger swing. But I go back to my standing point. Who the fuck cares whether it's 0.1% or 1%? That the degree change that we're causing should be a concern. We should go out of our way. Should we spend billions of dollars fixing a 0.1%? No. So if that 0.1% is going to shorten the Earth's life by 1,000 years, who gives a shit? But if we actually looked at the numbers and we predicted out, we're not going to see it's just 1,000 years out of a 5 billion year Earth, right? We're going to see millions of years being taken off the Earth's life, if not more. And it's,
well, it would be for life living, because right now we are in kind of a moderately cool ice age. It's like a short-term ice age, and this is something that actually I plan on talking. I have a really good friend of mine, David Goza, and I wanted to possibly talk with him on a science thing in the future on ice ages and things that are still happening. So everyone can get ready for that in the future. But let's get back over to what Curry, her other reference. This is the other one that she had when she was in the debate, and it's a single paper written by Zhao and Tong at the University of Washington in 2013, and it concluded that roughly half of the global surface warming over the past 32 or 50 years can be explained by the ocean cycles that we were talking about. They call it the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. That's what I was looking for a moment ago. Yeah, like that comes right off your tongue, right? It's nice and easy to remember.
Say it again.
Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. Multi. I haven't even been drinking, man.
I know. You're slurring your speech like you might as well be.
Okay. Well, Matt Ridley also recently referenced this paper in an error-riddled Wall Street Journal editorial that's been debunked. And the guy lists 4 places where that Wall Street editorial was debunked. It's great. But Tong and Zhao assumed that this variability was not could not be affected by anthropogenic forcings, which is basically what humans could do. We can't affect this variability, and it's been proven that is wrong by the guy. There's a guy named Michael Mann who confirmed that the approach used by Tong and Zhao misidentifies the external influences and essentially disproves them. So what this is these think tanks and this woman Curry, what they do is it's the problem with relying on a single paper. It's called single study syndrome. There's a link to that in the article as well, and it's flawed studies sometimes get published. It it happens. We hear about a bad study getting out there, and that's where the scientific method comes in. It goes and finds those bad ones, and it destroys them. It debunks them. It says they're bad. But the problem is they don't exist. They don't get like shredded. It's not the Wicked Witch of the West. You pour water on it and it melts away. It's still there. It's still there. And so people can grab it and go, hey, this thing's been published. It must be true. And they hold on to that one thing that confirms their bias, and they continue on. Like, this woman is apparently she's a big speaker. So according the findings of the article basically settle at this. Science is as settled as it gets. It's about as settled as the fact that smoking causes cancer, chlorofluorocarbons cause ozone depletion. Those are the aerosols we mentioned a bit ago. And sulfur dioxide causes acid rain, and DDT is toxic. It says science is inconvenient for certain industries and the political think tanks they fund, like the Marshall Institute and the TPPF that we mentioned earlier. These effects all pose dangers to public health, but climate change is perhaps the biggest one of them all. That's the article, and it's got tons of resources and great stuff. So we hope that we've kind of given you some ideas as to what this whole argument is and where that consensus is and how they form those ideas with that awesome report, the IPCC. And so take a look at that. Take a look at this article. And if you find anything, you have any questions, or if you found, I'm sure you found something that I've said wrong already, let us know. Send us an email at cellardoorskeptics at gmail.com, and we can possibly address your stuff in a mailbag like we did a little while ago, where I got harped and beat up on like I usually do when I get free reign in the science world.
Yeah. So I think that wraps it up. I think we've covered climate change. Not saying we won't do it again, but I do think we've nailed it on the head. I guess if I can be confident in your ability to converse, Chris.
I'll say we did a decent job showing some stuff that maybe some people don't know, and
I learned
there's
something.
Always more to cover.
Yeah, I learned something. So, but to your point, and as we walk out of the segment, it's settled. In my opinion, the base science on this is settled, and I think to deny this is just like somebody sitting here going, my cognitive bias is worth more than your scientific facts. And so, like Chris said earlier, I challenge you. We'll debate you. We're not even scientists, for fuck's sake. We'll debate you, though. I would love to have that conversation, especially live on air, about climate change. Because to me, climate change is important. And like I said earlier, who cares? If it's 1% or 100% of what we do affects nature and the climate, why are we not doing more to change this? So go out, go recycle. Because the science says we need to reduce our footprint. Otherwise, future generations aren't going to have a livable Earth to inhabit. So make sure you guys stick around. If you missed any of our other science segments, you can go back. We had 2 awesome ones before this. This is a 3rd episode, by the way. And we've done science every episode because that's how much I love Chris Hanna, and that's how much I love learning. So stick around after this quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Jennifer Bean from the Center for Inquiry. We'll be right back, everybody.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great episode so far. What we have up next is a personal friend of mine, somebody that I met through the secular community here in Michigan. And As somebody that's kind of become a personal friend of mine over the last couple of years, I started volunteering for the CFI. Next thing you know, Jennifer, somebody that's been with the organization for quite a long time, has made quite a bit of an impression on me. So I thought, hey, what's the point of our show? To do more localized stuff, to help promote atheist activism more locally than we ever have before. And so this is a great opportunity for me to reach out to the largest Michigan secular organization and to have a conversation with her about how she started inside of Michigan as an atheist and what it means to her. So if you will give a big round of applause to Miss Jennifer Bean from the CFI Michigan. How are you tonight, ma'am?
I am doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and usually I butcher it right there. Usually I say sir. It's just like a habit because, you know, I work with way too many men sometimes, and in the manufacturing industry, it's just a habit, right? You train yourself to say sir as a respect thing. And so I've had interviews before, and you can go back and watch Atheist Analysis. I've done interviews where I've had other women guests on, and I've called them sir, and then it's like, oh, shit, I shouldn't have said that.
Well, that's okay. I can talk like this if you need me to.
See, there we go. We just fixed the whole thing right there. So anyway, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It's busy as normal, but that's what it's like being an activist and an organizer. So.
Yeah. And so you've done this for a long time. So I've only known you for the past couple of years, but you've been with the CFI for quite a while, ever since the creation of the Michigan branch, and then you were with a secular organization in Michigan well before that. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, correct. So Center for Inquiry is a national group that has existed since, I believe, 1980. And our organization here in Michigan actually started as the Free Thought Association of West Michigan in 1997. And it was organized by several gentlemen who had been going to a very, very liberal church here in Grand Rapids called Fountain Street Church. And they were part of a discussion group that was talking about philosophy and different aspects of humanism, but they were still religious humanism, and they thought, let's just take the God part out of it. We're not interested in that. And so they went off to start their own group, and it started with 3 of them around a campfire in 1997, and they have been meeting every 2 weeks since then, and have moved around Grand Rapids many different times to different locations. And so I started going in about 2002. My now husband of 11 years and I, Jeremy, were both students at Cornerstone University, and through taking our introduction to educational philosophy, had been introduced to the idea of critical thinking and these guys named Plato and Aristotle, and that seemed kind of important, and we were surprised we hadn't been told about them earlier, and started looking into that. And over the course of about 6 months, one thing led to another, and we found ourselves to be newly formed atheists who were stuck in credit slavery at a Christian liberal arts college. And so Jeremy went online and just searched atheist and Michigan, and lo and behold, the Free Thought Association popped up, and they were meeting literally a half of a mile down the road from where we were going to school. And so we talked to a couple other friends who were kind of on a similar path as us and went over there, and it was both wonderful and really weird at the same time, because for that first meeting, the only other female in the entire room was 65 years old, and here I am, a 19-year-old college student, and it was really odd because there were only a couple people under the age of 40 in the entire room, also probably about 20 people, but they all invited us out to a really awful bar called Curly's Corner that's not there anymore, and asked us how we found out about the group and asked us where we were as far as our philosophical journey. And we told them, and they said, "That's fantastic. good for you guys for questioning your beliefs and for, coming out and finding us. And I just sat there in shock and awe, saying, they didn't tell me I was going to hell just now. That's cool. I like these people. And so we just kept going to events as we were able to. They still have lectures on the second and fourth Wednesdays. And after I graduated college, I heard the director, Jeff Seaver, one of the founders of the group, talking about how overworked he was and he needed help. And so I just started volunteering, and then I started volunteering more, and eventually we realized that we needed to do a fundraiser to hire a staff person, and I floated very quickly to the top of that list because I was already doing most of the things that they were going to hire this person to do. So that's the short version of how I ended up being working for Free Thought and then Center for Inquiry. So,
yeah.
But it's been a crazy adventure, that's for sure.
Let's go back to those college days real quick. I know that's not really too far. I mean, you haven't been out of college that long. I mean, you're not that. It's been
about 11 years now, so it goes by faster than you think.
So let's go back to so you started questioning inside of college, right? And you and I guess you were your boyfriend at that time.
Yeah.
Did you guys grow up together? Did you guys know each other before you went to college, or did you guys kind of meet at the college?
We actually met at church summer camp when I was 12 and he was 13, and he pushed me into the pool because he thought I was cute. I was very much a tomboy, and so I couldn't stand all the girls sitting there and gawking at the boys and talking about makeup and girl stuff, and I just was like, I'm going to go hang out with the guys. And so I had met a couple people there. We had just moved, and it was a new church that my family was a part of, and so I knew a couple of the guys actually from the puppet ministry that I had joined already. So yes, I was in the puppet ministry and a mime troupe when I was younger.
Mime.
Yeah.
Do you still do miming? Do you still do miming? Are you sure?
I talk with my hands a lot. Yes, no, Christian evangelical mime troupe, basically trying to convert people through really bad Christian pop songs. But anyway,
that's better though. Think about it, right? You don't have people trying. You're not talking to them. You're just moving your hands and pretending you're in a box. You're dressing up in makeup. There's no preaching to a point. I mean, it's all visual.
Well,
so like
the song, the lyrics of the song do the preaching, I guess. But so. But we very quickly became very good friends, and I would say Jeremy was the first and only true best friend that I've ever had, because I was homeschooled when I was a kid, and I had trouble connecting with other girls, and so basically meant I was a loner a lot. And so this group of guys kind of adopted me as a surrogate guy, and so it was really cool to have that. And so Jeremy and I were childhood sweethearts in that sense, and he was a year ahead of me in school, so he had already come to Michigan. I actually moved to Colorado for 2 years, the last couple years of high school, and so I found the closest school to him that I go to that would give me a decent amount of scholarships, and I followed my heart, and it was a really good decision. We've been married for 11 years now, and we've been together for 21, so jeez. I think it's working.
So when you guys, when you moved here to go to school, did your parents consciously move to Grand Rapids for your relationship, or was it more of this is just kind of where they wanted to land? Or did you strike out on your
myself.
Oh, you came here by yourself?
Yeah.
Oh,
my parents live in Colorado. His parents then lived in Illinois. They've since moved to Florida. So no, it was just the two of us here. And Jeremy had ended up in Michigan because his uncle and cousin were both very engrossed in a specific theology called dispensationalism. And about end of junior high school, Jeremy had started studying that with his cousin. And so that was the primary reason he came here, because he was going to Grace Bible College in Wyoming to study dispensational theology, and he was studying to become a pastor. And so I came to Michigan, and I was studying music education so that when he was a pastor, I could direct the choir and teach music lessons and help support him in his ministry. So
almost like a missionary couple.
Yeah. And
very close.
But unfortunately, asking questions got in the way. So Jeremy was a year ahead of me in school, so as he was learning different things about philosophy and critical thinking, he would read all of this stuff, and then we would hang out, and he would tell me everything, and he had been studying, and I would think, oh, that makes sense. And fast forward 6 months later, all of those that makes sense meant that Christianity didn't make any sense anymore as a guiding philosophy for us. Mm-hmm. And so he was always very clear that I had to make the decision for myself. And so I trailed behind him about 6 months after he had told me that he had decided that he didn't know what he believed in, but the Christian theology that he'd been taught didn't stack up to critical analysis, and that he was still going to be trying to figure out what he thought. But if we were going to try and make our relationship work, then he would be willing to do whatever it would take to help make sure that we could stay together. And but I've always been a very practical person, and so just having all of those long conversations with him, it very quickly I came to realize that, you know, I could still continue calling myself a Christian and staying in the culture in which I was already engrossed, but I felt like I would be lying to people and lying to myself. And so on New Year's, right after New Year's Day, right after midnight on New Year's in 2002, I told him that I had finished this book that he had asked me to read called Atheism: The Case Against God by George H. Smith. And in the last chapter, he says, when you get right down to it, you realize the decision's already been made, and it's more of a whimper than a bang. And I was so mad because I wanted to have the aha moment like people have conversion stories. I wanted to have a deconversion aha. And I was so mad that I threw the book across the room and said, damn it, he's right. And so that was a couple days before New Year's. So right after the stroke of midnight, I told Jeremy that I had decided that I didn't believe in the Christian God anymore. And then I just broke down crying because I felt like the entire fabric of the universe had been ripped out of underneath me, because that's the only thing I'd ever known. I'd been homeschooled in church 4 to 6 days a week. I was sent to Christian high school. I was at a Christian college, and I was just inside this big bubble, and I'd never been even exposed to the other religions in the world. And Jeremy, being the awesome person he is, went into his bedside drawer and pulled out a photo book of some pictures I myself had taken as we were climbing Long's Peak in Colorado right after my high school graduation, and said, tell me that that is any less beautiful now. And I stared at it for a few minutes, and I regained my composure, and I said, no, actually, that's more beautiful, because if the universe is just random chance, and we somehow, through all of those random chances, were both born and met each other and have been through all of the challenges and struggles that we had fought for to keep our relationship and to stay strong with each other until that point, that is more amazing, because God wasn't there directing it all. It just kind of happened, and that moment will stay with me forever. So.
Well, you know, and that's funny. That's a lot of people don't have those aha moments. I mean, it almost seems like it's a more gradual process. I mean, there are some. I mean, to a point, I had a very small aha moment. It was, I was having issues, started going back to church, you know, yada, yada, yada. Then all of a sudden, you know, I got a new job, started school, and, you know, my fiance was like, hey, listen to Seth Andrews. within a week, it was like, oh, this is a simple fucking decision. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why did I even think this before?
Right.
But, you're right. Just being able to look at something and go, hey, that's amazing. And if random chance, evolution, all these other processes happen to create this, that is, in my opinion, more amazing than something that orchestrated, something that created it. And to just and to sit there and think about that, it's so much easier, I think, for people to use a god to answer things. And I think to me, it's a scapegoat. It's scapegoating. I probably shouldn't say this. I'll get crucified at some point. I'll get 20 emails. There'll be Christians be like, it's not scapegoating. What the hell are you talking about? Now have me on your show so I can debate you. But in reality, to me, that's what it feels like. But the more important thing is, you're an atheist now. You've been that way for quite a long time. And you've kind of grown up in Michigan, or not in Michigan, but you've grown up in the secular culture in Michigan, which is very, if anybody lives here, they know it's very conservative. This is not an easy place to be an out atheist, and it's probably not even easy to be an out secular humanist here. But you've done it. It's something that you've done. You've become passionate about it. You've dedicated your life to a point to atheist activism. And, I have to applaud you because you came out and recognized this a hell of a lot younger than I did. And you've had a lot longer to be able to make an impact. So tell us a little bit about some of the different things that the CFI does now, and that's things that you've been a part of about helping to change the culture in Michigan to embrace secularity, or at least accept us as human beings instead of whatever the hell they used to think we were.
Sure. Yeah, you're exactly right. Some of your fans might have been aware my husband had a podcast called Reasonable Doubts, and they had this tagline that they would joke about at the beginning of their show, saying that live to you from Grand Rapids, the bejeweled clasp on America's Bible bra. And it has been very rightly been described as the Bible Belt of the North, and especially downtown Grand Rapids has become much more liberal, but you go about 5 miles outside the city center and it's about as conservative as it's ever been. And although that has been a challenge, that's actually one of the reasons why our particular group, as the Free Thought Association and now the Michigan chapter of Center for Inquiry, has actually been so successful. Michigan and Center for Inquiry Indiana are the two largest and most active Center for Inquiry centers in the entire country. And the director there and I have actually had discussions about that, saying that it's partially because of how conservative it is in the particular areas that we have a majority of our programming, that people have a need to have a support network and events and social activities so that they can go and be with people who are of like mind. Because if you're in a big metropolitan city like Chicago or New York, there are so many different things you could be involved in, from cultural to theater, arts, music, everything, that if you don't go to church, people don't make a big deal out of it. But in Michigan, it's a joke, but it's not. That the first question that people will ask you after they say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so," is, "What church do you go to?" And granted, I haven't gotten that question in a while, but I think my reputation precedes me at this point. But it is true. We still do have people who come in all the time that they're not out to their boss or their neighbors or their friends or sometimes even their parents or their wives or their husbands, because they just don't want to deal with the falling out from that. Luckily, through the work of groups like Center for Inquiry in Michigan and other secular and skeptic groups around the country, and also the rise of social media, we've really started to bridge the gap and help people connect and feel more comfortable with coming out. Just like the LGBT movement has pushed for a long time, that the more people can come out and be open, the easier it makes it for everybody else. And when I first started working for CFI, I oftentimes left out the whole part about it being a secular nonprofit. I would just tell people I was an event planner, unless it was actually pertinent to the discussion, because I just didn't want to have to explain myself again. But now I'm much more comfortable with it. And part of that has come from just experience and practice. But part of it is also knowing that if I can openly say I am an atheist, I'm a secular humanist, and this is what secular individuals believe. We are moral people, we're ethical people, we care about our families and our communities, we give back, we have social service projects, and we participate in interfaith programs. There's still people that give us weird looks at tabling events and people who cross to the other side of the aisle to pass our booth so that they don't have to engage with us. But even people who are religious, we have them come up a lot of times and say, hey, I'm glad you're here. And so the culture in the last decade really, I think, has shifted quite a bit. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're definitely making an impact. So you had asked, what are some of the things that CFI currently does? So I am part of the outreach department of Center for Inquiry, so we are the grassroots level. We are on the ground organizing programs for our members. We have 2 educational lectures a month in West Michigan, and that can be anything from science, philosophy, history, politics, all from a perspective that aligns with Center for Inquiry's mission to foster a secular society based on science, reason, freedom of inquiry, and humanist values. And so if it's interesting to talk about, we've probably had a lecture on it at some point. We also have discussion groups called Cafe Inquiry that talk about different topics. We have Skeptics in the Pub, which is mostly a social group and an excuse to come drink a beer with other free thinkers. But we do talk about whatever is on people's minds. And we started in West Michigan, but we've slowly been expanding throughout the state. We now have events in 8 cities throughout Michigan. And we have some very active volunteers in the Detroit area that are helping us organize more large-scale events like the educational lectures, our annual solstice dinner we now have in 2 locations. And one of our biggest events each year that is one of my favorites that I helped start is the Secular Summer Retreat, which is an opportunity for secular families and people who don't have kids too, to come together for a weekend and basically just hang out in a historic campground near Hastings, Michigan, go kayaking, throw water balloons at each other, go down a giant slip and slide, eat good food, and just enjoy having secular people that you can talk openly about what you believe or don't believe.
And the best part about the summer retreat, just so everybody knows, the best part of the whole thing is that there was an actual cook-off. There was an actual cook-off that happened, so we got to eat not just normal food, normal camp food. You actually got to eat there. It was a brisket cook-off, if I remember right.
Yep.
And it was between Mike and Ed, and they both competed against each other for the title of Master Chef.
Oh yeah, you would not believe the amount of trash talk going on behind the scenes. It was pretty funny, but yeah, no, and I have to correct you though. It is not normal camp food. We make really, really good food.
Yep. And you guys catered to all the different allergies, too. I mean, you guys had vegan food, vegetarian food. It wasn't just like, hey, you're going to eat sandwiches and chips.
Yep.
Or hot dogs.
Yep.
Actually, I don't think I ate a hot dog that whole weekend, now that I think about it.
We don't have hot dogs.
Yeah,
That's
see? So
not
it works
good
out even
enough.
better. Yeah, see? That's even better. No hot dogs.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love the retreat. It started as our 10th anniversary. We used to do a picnic, and so we thought, hey, let's do a weekend retreat. And everybody loved it so much that we've been doing it for 9 years now. And we cook all the food in-house. We have pretty much every person who attends volunteers at some point during the event, so everybody's giving back to the event. And it's just a great time. I love it. I usually have a passel of kids walking behind me, asking how they can help and what they can carry, and it's a great event, and it also highlights one of the things that I think sets Center for Inquiry apart from some secular organizations, and I know I'm generalizing, but some groups are more focused just on arguing with theists about their beliefs. And one of the things that, and we have members who enjoy doing that, and we have events that do that as well, where we critically analyze specific beliefs and claims. But one of the things that has come all the way back from the Free Thought Association is that we wanted to create a forum where people could openly express and discuss ideas in a respectful and welcoming place. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people in West Michigan who come out of really religious groups have trouble finding, is because you can't ask questions. A lot of times you don't feel comfortable honestly asking questions that challenge the belief system that you're a part of. And I think that's really important, that if we encourage people to think for themselves, sure, it leads to some difficult conversations, but if you choose to continue believing, then at least you know exactly why you're believing something, not just believing it because that's what you were taught. And that was a lot of it for me. Like, I never analyzed this stuff until Jeremy and I started really thinking through it in college, and then you just realize some of it doesn't add up. And the questions, instead of getting answers, you get more questions. And that's one of the things that really motivates me and drives me to continue working for atheist and secular activism, and to raise the awareness of secular people in our communities, because we are people too, and we just want to be accepted for what we believe. And it's nice to have more and more people kind of coming out of the woodwork and just knowing that we're here. So. Yeah.
And you know, your cafe inquiries, I've been to several cafe inquiries. There was actually a couple of Christians that used to attend. I don't know if they still do or not, but the whole point of those discussions is like you said, it's an open forum. You let anybody in. It's not like, hey, you're a Christian, get the fuck out. It's, hey, come on in, let's have a conversation. You know, bring your thoughts. But it's not a debate. It's always a very laid back style.
Yeah.
There's always a topic, and it's always very a welcoming atmosphere if somebody wants to learn about the other side.
Right. We do have some people that do really want to argue, and we just have to remind them that they're welcome to do that wherever they want, but you can do that after the event. And I think one of the things that really struck me early on was the idea of free thought as a movement itself. Secularism encompasses free thought and atheism and secular humanism too, but the idea of behind the definition of free thought, which is I thought it was kind of cool why they had picked that title for our original group name, was it doesn't have as much of a derogatory history as like atheism does, but the idea is to examine ideas based upon their evidence. And as I became more comfortable with the secular worldview, I realized I've been a naturalist my entire life. If you could show me how it worked or explain to me how something worked, I'm good. Thanks. I got it. You know, but if you just tell me because I said so or because that's the way it is, that just never sat well with me. So I think that that's really important. And one of the things that has been a frustration that I've learned is that not all atheists are skeptics or critical thinkers, and we still have a lot of work to do in that side of things. And I think that's one of the benefits and the strengths of Center for Inquiry's mission, is that it's free inquiry and critical thinking. It's not just a lack of a belief in a supernatural power or a God of any sort.
And so, you know, we're getting down to the end. I want to be respectful of your time. But one of the big things that stands out to me is you've been doing this for, you said, 11 years now. And we all know, and I shouldn't have to say this, but we all know the atheist movement for quite a while was very male-dominated. And, well, very white and male-dominated. But so you kind of broke stride. I mean, like, if you think about it, to a point you are an ambassador, because back in the day when, you know, there wasn't a lot of women, you kind of put your foot forward. You said, hey, I want to do this. I want to, you know, activate. And I can give credit to Jeff and them, you know, where credit's due. They embraced you and utilized your talents. But to a point, it took a lot of balls for you to, you know, I guess it's a bad term. It took a lot of spirit for you to, you know, join into this community that is very heavily male-dominated. And, you know, we can all debate what feminism is and what feminism should do, but to me, that's a very feminist stance. You went and said, hey, I like this, I want to support this, and I'm going to make it whether you like it or not. And that, to me, that's courage. That's a hero status to me, somebody that I can respect and look up to. So I guess for me, what I would like to hear is not just why you wanted to do it, but encouragement to the rest of those out there, other people who want to stand up and get involved in something, who may be in a minority group, that it's not always the end of the world, that you can make it and fit in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your nice compliment. It's like being an organizer in general can sometimes be a job that doesn't get a lot of praise because, if people aren't fellow organizers, they don't really realize sometimes how much work goes on behind the scenes. Christopher, I know you do because you have helped me do those very tasks, and know how important the database updates are. But for me, I agree that, Jeff and others in our group were very open and very encouraging. I don't think they would have chained me to the room, but they really, really wanted me to come back because I was under 40 and I was a female. And but the funny thing was, is as soon as we started going regularly, when other younger people came in, they'd beeline for us because it's like, oh, look, there's at least one other person that's kind of in my decade. I'll go talk to them. And I think part of the reason why I really became so dedicated as soon as I had time to volunteer, because I was very busy with coursework in college, and I wanted to make sure that group was still there, was there for other people the same way that group had been there for me. It was a safe haven. Being able to go to those lectures and just hang out with people afterwards, or go to the movie nights that we started after that, and just being able to decompress from a week of sitting in Christian college classes was just a lifesaver. And I still to this day get people sending me emails saying, I am so glad you guys are here. It's like a breath of fresh air. And that's almost the same wording that I used to use. And just like LGBT individuals, there's actually a lot of similarities to coming out as an atheist, because it's one of those hidden minority statuses, right? The color of our skin isn't defining us, but it's really easy. So it's easier to hide that, but it's also easier, I think, to be open with it because you have to put yourself out there to do it. And once I realized how liberating that was for me, I wanted to make sure that I could help people do the same. And the Living Without Religion support group that we have didn't start until about 6 years after I deconverted, and I was okay with what I believed and didn't believe at that point, but man, that would have been nice to have early on. And I'm just so grateful to our volunteers who help run that, because it's such a necessary thing to help people become comfortable with what they believe and being okay with being open about it. And so my note of encouragement that I would give to people who are wanting to get more involved or are already organizers for secular and skeptic groups is, keep going. People do really appreciate it. And even if you don't see it right now, it will make a difference in the end. And if you stand behind your reasons for doing it and you know why you're doing what you're doing and what you're going towards, people will see the passion and they will want to come and help. And then the second side of that is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Being a younger organizer, I've learned a lot of things through mistakes, but you know what? I've always had a very supportive community behind me, helping me to do things better and to help pick up the pieces and really make Center for Inquiry one of the largest secular groups in our state. And I've received multiple compliments of even the open and accepting forum, the tone that we've set. I have had people come in from other groups and saying, wow, you guys are so different from that other atheist meetup I went to. I'm not going back there, because all they wanted to do is just like attack each other and argue all the time. And this is really nice. So I'm really glad you guys are here. So, yeah, I keep going, but I guess the third thing is take care of yourself. If you are getting burnt out, is so easy to do in movements like this. You gotta take time for yourself and make sure that you don't burn out, so that your community doesn't burn out along with you as well.
Take a holiday, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So as we wrap up, and I promise we're wrapping up. Yeah. But as we wrap up, one of the things I like to ask, and I always like to ask a story, or ask you to tell a story. Like, tell us how you've impacted somebody else's life, because I think we have such busy lives, and especially those of us that do extracurricular activities after our normal jobs. I mean, your job isn't just a 40-hour week at the CFI. I mean, yeah, you do 40 hours, but your job is so much more. But when you touch people, people reach back and touch you. So can you tell us any time that stands out for you, one of your favorite stories of how somebody came back and either said, hey, Jennifer, this really meant something to me, or, hey, I know you don't think you're doing, such great work. I mean, you're not the American Atheist, you're not some national organization, but hey, you've touched my life. So tell us a little bit or a story about that.
Well, I'm going to do two really short ones. So the first one is when we, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had our first billboard. Center for Inquiry was doing a national billboard campaign. And it was the first time I was really out in the media, and I remember practicing talking points for hours because I was so afraid of messing up and saying the wrong thing or being attacked or getting threats. I remember it was I used to have way more personal information on my Facebook profile, and I took it down because I didn't want people to know where I lived or anything. And the coolest thing to me was seeing on all of the threads where people were talking about articles, was seeing my members going out and defending CFI and correcting people's mistakes and taking people to task, very politely, taking people to task about their misperceptions about freedom of religion. But the best ones of those were the Christians saying, I don't agree with you, but thank you for doing what you're doing, because I expected people to tell me I was going to hell. I didn't expect Christians to say, no, this is great. You guys keep doing what you're doing. I think it's great that you are here and that you're speaking out, because everybody has a right to believe what they want. That was really cool. The second story is Christopher, a very good friend of both of ours, Jeremiah Bannister, found out about Center for Inquiry through my husband's podcast several years ago. And his daughter, Samantha, was diagnosed with a very severe brain tumor in March this year. And one of the things that is the closest to my heart is supporting my members and having a social network, both emotionally and physically, for people, because a lot of people, when they leave religion, this didn't happen to me, but people have been excommunicated from their families. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their friends. And so we try to support people as much as we can with our small resources and our volunteers. But the minute we found out that Jeremiah and their daughter was in the hospital, I had 20 people emailing me and calling me, what are we doing? What can we do to help? And the level of support has been just amazing. And just seeing Jeremiah's gratitude for how much being a part of a secular community has meant to him makes the best days and the worst days worth it, and makes me just want to keep fighting to make sure that every person that has those things going on has a social network that they can rely on and hold up as an example to their religious friends as to how awesome secular humanists and atheists are and how good and caring they are, because there's nobody telling them to stay up late and talk on the phone with Jeremiah. There's nobody telling them to get so much food for them that they had to buy a chest freezer to keep it all, because we just wanted to help because we knew it was the right thing to do. And that has brought me to tears so many times, and it never ceases to amaze me how awesome my community and my secular family has been supporting them.
And I think it goes to show, and so you're just trying to make me cry here. That's what you're trying to do. Your goal tonight.
I'm trying not to cry.
If you could hear the pre-show, you would be like, "Oh, Jennifer's goal was to make Chris cry tonight," because I don't do that very often. But I think one of the biggest things that we could take from that, I mean, that's a very touchy story, and we go, what happens in religion? What did religion do really well? They brought people together. They took care of people. We can't deny that. We as much as we hate, I hate religion. I really do not. I'm an anti-theist, I guess, if you want to call it that. But we do have to admit that religious people have created communities that help support others through very trying times. And when this happened last year, and Jeremiah, I mean, it was a surprise. And for the listeners, if you don't know, Jeremiah is the host or co-host of Paleo Radio. You can check them out on Secular Media Group. He does some of the intros for my show. He's a personal friend of mine. But when he came out with that it was devastating. It was completely unexpected, and the amount of support that was given to him from those inside of the CFI people that you go, hey, I've only seen that person once, but they continue to donate and continue to give. That's amazing. To me, that's saying, hey, look, I'm glad your churches can do this, but we can do this too, and we don't fucking need a God to do it.
Yeah. I even had Christian friends my friends on Facebook that started following the story and were sending me messages saying, do they have everything they need? Because I just wanted to check and make sure. And they know where I stand and I know where they stand, but you know what? We're all humans, and it's great when people can go beyond the things that divide us and really focus on the things that can unite us, like taking care of our friends and our family. And that's part of the reason why you do so much work with the interfaith groups here in Grand Rapids and West Michigan, is to put my human face out there and have people understand what a secular person, what an atheist, what a secular humanist actually believes, not just the stereotypes that they have heard before. And it's not easy, but it's great because I've worked so hard to do that. I have people that go to bat for me that I'll hear about stories later and be very pleasantly surprised that so-and-so told their Christian friend about me, and now they're coming to the CFI lecture because they thought it looked interesting, because we are open to everybody. You don't have to be an atheist to come to our groups. If you like the topic, come and talk about it, you know? That's the whole point.
So, as we wrap up, tell everybody two things. One, if they ever want to contact you, where they can contact you. And two, tell them how they can support the CFI. Because we all know that you can't run an organization on goodwill, faith, and trust. There has to be some sort of a monetary value. And you guys are a 501c3, so everything is tax deductible. If you guys want to go donate, don't donate to me. Donate to the CFI. You can put my name on it and say, hey, Chris sent you. But just make sure you send the money to the CFI. So, Jennifer, tell us where we can get a hold of you and where we can donate.
Yep. So the web address where you can find out all of the details about all of our upcoming programs and what we're doing, and also a link to our donation page, is www.cfimichigan.org. And I'm sure Christopher can put a link for that in the show notes. And what was the second thing?
If they want to contact you personally.
Oh, money. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if you want to get a hold of me, I check the general email, michigan@centerforinquiry.net, or you can find me on Facebook. Just search my name, Jennifer Bien. And yes, please do send us donations. We would greatly appreciate it. We have really great, easy ways to sign up for a recurring monthly donation on our website. And we could definitely use some more support. We're just a little bit shy on our fundraising this year. But if you can't give money, you can fill out a volunteer profile and come help me like Christopher does, to do some of the very, very important behind the scenes work, or even in front of the scenes work, if you're interested. And we'd be glad to have your participation or support, whichever one you can give.
So cool. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure, as always, and I always say that, but I don't have guests on I don't like. How about that? So.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you guys stick around. We have a quick 30-second commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have more from Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be right back.
This is Matthew the Apostle from In the Name of God, the podcast, and you are listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Have a burning question? Want to share your thoughts with us? Think you know something that we would find interesting? Well, you're in luck. Send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. All your thoughts, interests, and help, just to drop us a line. Send us an email, cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com, for anything that you want to tell us or ask us, and we'll promptly respond. Now, please enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. It's brought to you by Chris Hanna and Christopher Tanner as we sit in our basements recording live information for you to digest. So tonight we've had some amazing guests and some amazing times. I mean, we talked about climate change, hot topic. We talked with the CFI in Michigan. And we even dug into a mailbag and pulled out some gems to have a conversation about. But we wouldn't be who we are, skeptics, without having this last conversation. So the media's been polarizing. We know. We don't want to over-inundate you, but we have to talk about gun control. We have to talk about mass shootings. We just have to. And I don't say this because I want you to go out and start conversations and arguments and you have to do this. I'm saying we need to do this because I need to have this conversation. And you want to know why I have to have this conversation is because I've never taken a stance publicly on gun control. I've said a few things, but I've never gone out of my way and made it a big platform item, if you want to call it that, about gun control. It's always something I've been neutral on. I'm not pro, I'm not against. I don't own any guns, honestly, but I don't say I would never buy a gun. But after all these shootings, I sit here and think about the death tolls, and I think about the kids. And I understand that they're not little kids like we had out on the East Coast a little while ago. But they are still kids. They're still human lives. And for me, that's huge. I'm a humanist. I don't like death. I can't stand murder. It bothers me, no matter whether you think it's worth it or not, for any type of murder. It bothers me as an individual. And so I think tonight we have to end the show on gun control because I think I need to take a stance at this point. I think I need to come out and say, okay, hey, you know what? My position has shifted yet again. And we need to actually converse. And because Chris Hanna is what I would call my political counterpart, we agree on a lot of things, but he's the guy that keeps me grounded. He's the guy that keeps me guessing at what I should believe in politically. And without having this conversation, without having another person to talk to me, to tell me, hey, maybe you're wrong, or maybe we should examine this, I would just be another voice aimlessly talking into the wind. So, Chris, we're going to talk about gun control, whether you like it or not. I'm going to drag you into this debate. I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming because I know, for the most part, you're a moderate. You're kind of in between. You have some stances, some nonsense, but just like me, you've not really taken a big public stance. It's not been a big thing. But I think we can't be silent anymore. I think we need to talk. I'll let you talk.
Well, this is a good conversation. That it's not so much we need to have it. Like it's like, holy crap, we got to get in there and take care of this. Well, just today alone, there were 2 shootings. I mean, we're recording this on Friday, the 10th right now, and just today alone, we had one. We had a couple days ago, we had one. This is something that it's coming to the front of our society. Something that we need to figure out. We need to help try to find something. I know we got all kinds of statistics that you hear from time to time about different groups saying, well, the number of murders has gone down and all this statistical stuff, but mass shootings are up. These kinds of things, there's new information. We live in this world with tons and tons of data, so we can kind of go over it and just kind of figure out where we are. My perspective is a little bit different than yours, but as I'm a hunter and I'm not a gun enthusiast, but I have a few, and my family has always been woodsmen, and we like to go out and hunt and do stuff like that and shoot, and we do a little bit of sport shooting, but it's not really a major part of my life. It's just another thing that just happens, and I do responsibly. And so I think that I like to think that everybody else can do it, but we keep hearing cases where people aren't, and so I'm open to new information and changing my own perspective as well. And I've had to challenge myself recently because of all this terrible news that we've had. Like I just like you, whenever I hear this stuff, it's somebody is ruining it for good people. When something like somebody abuses something like a weapon, a gun, anything like that, where you can harm people, and it's sad, and we do need to deal with it. So that's why I like the idea of doing this gun control conversation today. Yeah.
And so there's several facets to this. You know, we could talk about the gun control statistics. We could talk about the laws pertaining to some of the statistics. And then we could talk about the new hashtag, I am Christian, right? So I don't know which one you want to tackle first. Which one tickles your fancy the most, Chris?
Well, you talked about doing some statistics. Let's just go into some numbers. Like, you got a PolitiFact website that has a bunch of statistics in here.
Yeah, I actually have several links, and I'll throw all these in the description. And I know if our descriptions are long, we're very sorry, but we just we don't want to give you bullshit, right? We want to give you the links. We want you to go investigate, because we want you to come back and challenge us. If you think we're wrong about something, send me an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com, and we'll answer it. We'll address it on the show like we did earlier. But
you can read along too.
Yeah,
like you can read along while we're reading it, because we are. It's one of the things that's nice about pre-recording this. We can kind of clean it up so you're not getting us saying because I do that way too. I do that way too.
Not
much.
as much, because there's been no Jaeger bombs, because we had to record this remotely, given your situation with the new child and all. So
yeah.
So the politicalfact.com, they have something called the Truthometer, and they kind of analyze Barack Obama's statements. Now, this is not about the most recent shooting. This is a little older article, I will admit. But I don't agree with this article, but some of the points made sense. And so basically what they were trying to do is tear down what Obama said. And basically Obama said back in June that now is the time for mourning and for healing. But let's be clear, at some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries. It doesn't happen in other places with this kind of frequency, and it is in our power to do something about it. And so I admire what he said, but this article, the whole point of this article is to take the facts and debunk him. I don't agree with trying to debunk him as much as this article wants to. You know, it's probably a little more conservative than I am. Probably really more conservative than I am. But they have a point. He uses some absolute statements, which I disagree with. And that's exactly what this article does. It goes out of its way to show that some of these absolute statements are bullshit. They're not correct. They're not something we should endorse. Saying that this type of violence doesn't happen in other advanced countries is wrong. That's just purely wrong on its surface, and it's a turnoff. And unfortunately, in today's society, people that don't like Obama, or don't like liberals, don't like the Democratic movement, are going to go after any of these things to use them as a way to attack him.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that I always like to point to, and we always hear about that these types of things don't happen, in Norway, one of the happiest countries in the world, where people have all kinds of great reasons to be, content and just having a comfortable life. Anders Breivik killed 77 people a few years ago, I believe it was, and that was a huge deal. With that, these things do happen in other countries. Once again, you've got to remember that the United States is a massive land mass compared to a lot of the European nations, and so if you think of other countries that are kind of at our economic level, that whether or not they're a gun society or not, they do happen. But since we're so much bigger, that I can see happening more, because it essentially would be like, the majority
you want to know
of
what
Europe.
the statistics say. So they actually cite that Norway shooting. And so what they do inside of this, and they break this down, and I think this is genius because it kind of does point out the flaws in Obama's statement. And I will tell you that Obama's statement is flawed. It's a flawed statement. But the sentiment behind it is not. And if Obama maybe had these facts, he would have stated what he stated different. So the Norway shooting, they've had one shooting with 67 people. You said 77. This one says 67.
Okay.
It is what it is, right? They had 33 wounded, 67 dead. So that's 100 total. They have a very small population, only 5.1 million or 5.2 million. I can't remember which it is. So their mass shootings per 100,000 fatality is high, very high. It's 1.3, right? But in the United States alone, we've had 133 shootings, 487 dead, 500 wounded, for a total of 992 people. But guess what? We have a population of 318 million people. So our fatality percentage is 0.15. So we're very low compared to Norway, but we have a higher scale amount of shootings that happen.
Yeah, it's a statistical. If you interpolate the data, you interpolate the number of shootings per 100,000 people or whatever. We don't have that many, provided how many guns we have in this country. It's a relatively low amount, but we probably have the highest consistency of these things happening every year, and that is what I would like to. I would like to instead of talking about, okay, well, there's this many guns and there's this kind of stuff. Why are these things happening in our country? Those are the mental aspects that I like to talk about gun control. It's the psychology of gun control, and that would go into the background checks and stuff, which is what I kind of personally support. So the PolitiFact article that you got. They kind of rip up Obama's perspective a little bit, saying you probably should have used some numbers and you kind of reached a little too far. What was the next? You said the hashtag. How the hell does I am Christian hashtag match up with the gun shooting?
It does. Well, how about this? There's no facts. There's no statistics that go into that. It's just people that are saying, hey, I feel this. So the I am Christian hashtag, and this is a little bit of a deviation because there is some statistics. I have a chart that shows laws, gun laws and stuff like that in different states and the number of fatalities that go into them. But we'll talk about the I am Christian thing for a minute, because that's kind of another thing that rubbed me the wrong way. And this I am Christian thing...
short.
Huh?
This will be a short one. I can't see the I am Christian hashtag really getting into a big chunk of the article here.
Yeah. So there's a couple of articles I'll link that talk about the I am Christian hashtag. There's one by Todd Starnes, and, it's the day Christians were martyred on American soil, right? And he's a conservative Christian writer. He writes a lot of stuff in that arena. And he's not wrong, okay? So there are Christians being murdered in America. I won't tell you whether the Oregon shooters' murders were driven by religion or non-religion. To me, if he came out and if he had a manifesto that said, I'm an atheist, and he went and killed a bunch of Christians and that's why he did it, I would dismiss him. I would tell him he's a piece of shit. But he's an atheist, right? Yeah, I'm not going to say he's not an atheist. I don't care. Just because he's an atheist doesn't fucking goddamn make it whether it's right or wrong. If he said, I'm a secular humanist, and he went and killed a bunch of people, I could argue against that to somewhat of an extent. But I wouldn't say he never claimed it. I would never say that he's not a secular humanist. I would just say by our definition of secular humanism, he doesn't fit. And so the big thing about this article is they started this hashtag saying, I'm Christian, because supposedly, and this is only going through eyewitness testimony, but eyewitness testimony says that he asked people what their religion were. If they said they were Christian, he shot them in the head or shot to kill. And if they were not, if they either didn't answer or they said they're not Christian, he would shoot him in the leg. Now, whether that's true or not, in my opinion, to a point, is irrelevant. He shouldn't be killing people, whether they're Christian or not. I do not condone killing Christians for any reason, ever. It is wrong to kill people, and I'll state this 100 times. It is wrong to kill people. But the big problem I have with this I Am Christian hashtag is they're trying to polarize this event. They're trying to take away a mass shooting and say he went out and objectified Christians, and they're trying to turn this into a fucking witch hunt. And I don't agree with that. Why do Christians think they're martyred? So how many Christians got killed? It's sad. It's wrong. It's horrible. These people should not have died, whether they were Christian or not. But that doesn't fucking mean that there's a witch hunt on Christians. That's not what this means. They're not being martyred because they're Christians. It's because we have a fucked up society, and people have some mental illnesses, and people have the ability to get access to guns, and they went out and killed people. And it just happened to be that person chose to kill Christians.
Whenever I hear a situation like a shooter going through and picking some group of people to kill, or just making that decision, I immediately disregard and ignore any kind of position, any kind of points that they really ever make, because the point when somebody gets to the precipice where they're going to decide to murder other humans, their psyche is so damaged beyond anything that I can really understand, that there's nothing that they do that I would even remotely say is rational at all. They could run around saying, "Do you like Scooby-Doo?" No, blam, you're dead. Like there really is nothing they said, nothing they write down is rational and useful as far as, okay, well, why did this person really do this? There's a psychological there's psychology, there's mental illnesses, there's something, because that basically my perspective is that you don't choose to do something like this unless there's something really, really wrong. And that's so, like the martyr thing, where this person that was trying to attack us or whatever. Well, why would somebody pick something like that? And then, okay, well, why would they pick this group? And then, okay, would you break it down to the smallest problem, the smallest thing that would cause an attack like this? It's always going to be something in the psyche of the person. Because at least to me, I don't know any other way you can get to becoming a mass shooter and not have some serious mental needs that were not met. Somebody didn't help this guy when he needed it, or this woman, whoever's doing the shooting. Or they didn't get the help they needed when they needed it.
Yeah, or they could just not have the correct mental faculties. I mean, we understand there's serial killers, right? I mean, that's not like that's an illusion. It's not like it's some fucking conspiracy, for Christ's sake. This shit happens, and it has happened for years.
Yep.
But
it's just an increase there's an increase in occurrences of mass shootings, and I think it partially because of our 24/7 media making these people into famous movie stars.
Mm-hmm. But that's the same thing. It does the opposite effect. And that's what this article is like saying, except for they're not understanding. They're basically saying, hey, we're trying to make famous people out of Christians, right? This guy says, Todd fucking Starnes says this, Christians were martyred for their faith on American soil, a fact mostly ignored by the mainstream media and the White House. He goes out of his way to accuse Obama of basically ignoring the fact that it was Christians. And he's like, Obama will politicize this issue. But is he going to politicize the persecuting of Christians? No, because that's politically incorrect. It's not politically incorrect, sir. If somebody was targeting Christians, that's wrong. We should address that. If it comes out that this guy's manifesto says, I went out of my way to kill Christians, we should address it. We should say that is wrong. But that doesn't mean all Christians are fucking martyred. It doesn't mean that they're lambs being led to the slaughter, for Christ's sake. And that's exactly what he says. He says in his article, lambs are being led to the slaughter. And it's not politically correct narrative. Of course it's not, because that's not exactly what it is. You have a guy that has a mental illness or that has a disposition towards killing people who turned around and he got an obsession with Christians for whatever reason and killed them. It is sad. It is wrong. But it does not mean it's a persecution against Christians. If it's a persecution against Christians, we need to see other facts that would relate to it. We would need to see other instances. We need to see other times that this happened more often than not. So if we took all the mass murders and we're like, okay, how many were Christian? Oh, 80% of them were Christian. And then we turned around and said, okay, Well, how much of the nation's Christian? 80%? Oh, those two numbers correlate. But if they were like, okay, how many were Christian? Oh, 80% were Christian and only 20% of the nation is Christian? Then I would say, fine, that's persecution. So what I don't want to minimize, or I don't want to minimize the fact that people died, because it is disgustingly wrong. But I don't want to try and capitalize on something just because it's their bias, it's their belief. And I'm sorry, but to me, Todd Starnes, that's what you're doing. And if you disagree with me, contact me, Todd. Contact me. Email me. Call me on my phone. I'll give you the number if you email me. I'll publicize it. But call me, Todd, and I'll talk to you live on air, unedited, if that's what you want. But the bigger thing is, and this kind of goes back, Chris, to the whole topic of this episode, control versus not control. Yeah. How much is too much, right? And so I have a chart that lists out all the different regulations for the National Journal, and they go over all the different regulations by state, and then they relate it to the number of gun-related deaths. Now, we're kind of moving away from mass shootings, and this is just gun-related deaths, so we're kind of going generalizing. But the less amount of laws, the more shootings that happen. Isn't that crazy?
That is the findings on the charts then? So
yes.
The less regulatory laws, the more shootings that are occurring.
Yes. So Alaska has the highest percent of gun-related deaths at 19.8%. They have in here, I gotta magnify this because I can't read it. So they have, the first one is a permit required to purchase a handgun. They have no laws against that. Are background checks needed on handgun sales? They, again, say no. Must handguns be registered or reported? Guess what their answer is? No.
No across the board, man.
Yep. Does some form of standard ground law exist? The answer is yes. They do have one, but it was just recently enacted. So I'll grant them if that's a newer law. How difficult is it to obtain a concealed and carry permit? You know what their answer is? No permit required. Easy. Not even easy.
No anything?
It's just no permit. You don't fucking need a permit to do a concealed and carry. How difficult is it to generally carry an open carry permit? Guess what the answer is?
I'm going to guess there's no permit on that either.
Nope. Exactly.
If you can carry a handgun inside your person, not inside your person, but in your clothes or whatever, then I would assume that open carry would be even easier, because that's usually the easier one for people to do open carry.
Yep, fair enough. And then the last category, is there a waiting period for handguns?
There can't be.
It says not. It says not. Now, I want to point this out because I do want to say that some of the data is a little inconsistent. We can't just say, hey, the bottom and the top are standard. So the second highest is MA, right? And they have yes across the board to most of them except for two. You don't have to register or report a handgun, and there's no waiting period for handguns. And they are the second lowest gun-related deaths per 100,000 people. So they are the second lowest. So there is some anomalies. I don't want to go across the board and say this defines everything. But there's a pattern. The less laws that we have, the higher the gun death ratings. And so, I'm anti-prohibition, right? I'm anti-creating laws for the most part. But I'm at the point where I'm saying, hey, look, there's lots of fucking people dying. There's lots of shootings. And this is not happening everywhere. This is not something that's happening across the world in the same way it is here. So we have to understand and look at, maybe we need prohibition on certain things. Maybe we need to look at gun laws and go, hey, we need to be stricter about our gun laws. We need to be stricter about who owns ammo, how much ammo, what type of fucking guns you can have. Maybe we should be stricter because the statistics say the more laws, the less deaths. Does it make for happy people? Probably not as much, but there's a lot of less people dying. Which is more important?
That's pretty much where I'm a more regulation type thing as opposed to banning type things. I don't really like the idea of prohibition as opposed to like adding in a bunch more regulation and regulatory effects. I really like the idea that there are a majority of people who do these things responsibly, and then those people, like my guns, will never be in a black market. My guns will never make it to a gun show. They will never be sold on Craigslist, eBay, or anything like that. I'm responsible with this stuff, and I know that there will never be any issue along those lines. And I would like to think there's a lot of people that are like that as well. And if I wanted to go buy something, I would probably not have an issue with waiting a few days to have myself checked out, because I'm not in a hurry to get my gun. I'm not in a hurry to get some kind of revenge fantasy. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait until the last minute to go hunting to buy a gun and ammo like 3 days before I got to go out hunting, because that's irresponsible. So my perspective on a lot of this kind of stuff is the regulatory stuff that they talk about, having the more laws and having, regulation and things like that. That's where we're going to get some good results. And in the charts that you're showing there, that is a pretty decent. We're seeing there's a lot of correlations, and there are light underpinnings for some causation. That when we see that correlation of more regulatory rules and making it more difficult, that we're seeing a lower number of dangerous firearm use, and that's kind of the goal. That's the whole point of this entire thing, is to reduce the number of firearms that are being used in a dangerous or deadly manner. So if that's a place to start, let's start there. Let's get in the middle and kind of play with it. It doesn't have to be an absolute no guns or all the guns like the NRA, because I think that's too far left and right. Like, we got to get in the middle and just try to work together.
Mm-hmm. So as we move to wrap the episode up, and this is more of I'm going to call out the hypocrisy type thing. This is more of the skeptic in me. And I'm not going to take a stance and say we need more laws and certain types of restrictions, or we need to get rid of guns. I'm not going to say that, because I don't think we should get rid of guns. I don't think that type of prohibition is a solution. But I agree with you. We need stricter laws. We need longer waiting times. We need to...
I say bump the heck up on the background checks, and let's add government jobs. Let's get a whole bunch of people doing background checks in there and going through and making sure. I mean, just adding more regulatory things like that. The government is the number one employer in the country. Let's add a few more. Why the hell not, right?
And let's add more training, right? How many people are required to get training? So, and before I get into the last article, the one big meme that goes around is, look, Switzerland has one in every person has a fucking gun, right?
Yep.
But the best part is, not only do they have to have military service, it's almost always required for men to have military service over in Switzerland, but they go through
like
periodic training. They go through periodic training. It's not like they just said, hey, here's a gun, I'm going to teach you how to shoot it. They go, no, we're going to create a fucking program that teaches you how to shoot and teaches you how to maintain a gun and teaches you not just once in your lifetime, but every X amount of years. And so that fucking meme is bullshit, because it's not realistic. And so,
well, maybe not for us, but I've actually looked up that meme, and that is something that they have. That country really does require, the majority of the men to do that, and I don't think that is something that would be applicable to the United States, because we have an issue with compulsory military. like most people don't like the idea of a draft. I mean, hell, people get freaked out when we talk about compulsory voting just to get people to pay attention to the goddamn government. So, I like the idea of what Switzerland does, but I don't think that is an applicable plan for us. But maybe it's something we could learn from.
You could 100% be right, Chris. I mean, in reality, our society is different, and we have a very polarizing society compared to some other nations in the world.
Yeah, but maybe if we took a tab from what they do and add that training to it. So let's say here's a waiting time, and during that 3-day waiting period, the gun sale place, there will be a how to use this weapon, and if you don't pass that test, you don't get the gun.
Yeah,
like a dry or whatever.
Yeah, let's place more responsibility on gun owners, right? And maybe that's just the socialist in me, and maybe it's too democratic for some of those listening. But let's place more ownership on the gun owners. You want to own a gun? You want to do something? I have to pay a fucking sin tax for my alcohol. I don't agree with that. But I'm not out there protesting it. Maybe we should create some sort of a way for gun owners to have to go through training periodically. Maybe they should have to go through and understand what they're doing. And if they have kids in the house, they should have to go through a different type of training, because it's a whole different realm when kids are with guns. And if
this
you,
could be the good conversation in the middle. Let's talk about it. I
Yes.
would really like to hear what really conservative people think about this particular topic.
You
if
don't
they think
want
it's
to.
a good idea or not. Well, no, I mean, I don't see how they could say no, but yeah, they probably will.
Yeah. But as I leave, as we walk away from the last segment of the show, and we thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. The last article that I read talked about an amazing correlation between abortion laws and gun control laws. And the best part about this is it makes sense. So you have a lot of people going, no more laws. We don't need any more gun control. It's just fine. We need to pray. Or even those that are secular that think we don't need gun laws are saying, hey, I'm going to keep my damn guns no matter what because it's my right, it's my liberty, it's my amendment right. But guess what they're doing? Guess what the fucking conservatives are doing? They're taking and getting rid of abortion. They're making it harder for women to do this. And so I want to address this. It says, there's a quote that somebody tried to make famous on Facebook. And I don't think this is a famous saying. I just think this is a very important saying.
I saw the meme of it. It got pretty viral when I saw it.
Yeah. And so it's very important what it says. It says, how, and I quote this, how about we treat every young man who wants to buy a gun like we treat every woman who wants to get an abortion? A mandatory 48-hour waiting period, parental permission, a note from their doctor providing that he understands what he's about to do, and a video he has to watch about the effects of gun violence, and maybe even an ultrasound wand up their ass. But that's a whole different sentiment. But let's close down all but one gun shop in the state, right? Let's make it so that they have to travel hundreds of miles, take time off of work, stay overnight in a strange town just to buy a gun. Let's make him walk through a gauntlet of people holding photos of loved ones who were shot to death by mass murderers, people who want to call that person a murderer, and beg him not to buy a gun. It makes more sense to do this with young men and guns than with women and healthcare. I mean, no woman getting an abortion has killed a room full of people, right?
This is a very, very well-constructed logic pump.
Yeah. And so, is there probably an argument against it? I'm sure there is. But the sentiment is true. The sentiment rings true. And as we close the show out, I just want everybody to sit down and think about it. If we're willing to restrict women's rights because we're going to try and say that abortion is murder, we're killing a fetus, that fetus is a baby. If we're going to say that, then why the fuck can't we turn around and use the same goddamn logic to turn around and look at people buying guns and people that want to own something that can kill somebody in less than a second? Why are we not taking the same type of regulation and using it on them? Is it because you guys don't want to understand it? Is it because you guys don't want to actually have to go through that? Is it because you're not a woman and you don't have to actually do the waiting hour period? You don't have to carry the child? You don't have to go through the emotional trauma and stress that an abortion can cause? You don't have to go through the stigmatizing issues that society places on you because you even considered an abortion? Because you even went and got an appointment at a place that does abortions? Is that why we don't have to have these laws? Is that why? So I encourage everybody to actually stop and think about this for a second and to think about the way gun control laws do not coexist with the way we restrict women. And while maybe this sounds like a feminist rant, and maybe it is a feminist rant here, we have to at least acknowledge that there is not a connection. There's a disconnect between what we're making laws about and what the reality is. And if we can't accept that, if we can't actually go about our lives and say, hey, you know what? You're right, Chris. You're right. Maybe this is a disconnect and maybe we should work to fix it. Then don't sit here and tell me that I shouldn't ask for more gun control laws. Don't sit here and tell me that I'm wrong because of that. Because all I want to do is stop murder. And while I don't see fetuses as somebody that's murdered, I do see real live human beings being murdered by guns every day. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. As we close out, I know that's a heavy rant, and that sometimes I go off on them, but I do encourage you guys, let's look at the statistics. Let's look at the research. Let's do something about this. Let's stop talking about it. Let's go petition Congress. Let's go get people to change laws to help make society safer for everybody to live. stay tuned because next week we have an awesome episode. And guess what? Chris is going to be back. He's not even taking a week off. He's had a kid. He's still going to be here.
Yep, I don't get to get off of work, and this is even easier than work. So I'll be here every day, all day.
So next week, we're going to touch on some of the newest South Park episodes about political correctness. Again, another hot topic. We just seem to like to do it. We're going to talk with David Teachout about the psychology of leaving religion behind, something that's very much touched my heart, something that we have a group in Grand Rapids called the CFI that actually addresses 2 weeks out of every month for those that have left religion. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. Make sure you go out, subscribe to our account on iTunes or Spreaker, show that you love us, and if you disagree with something or you like something, send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. Thank you guys, and remember, prepare yourself for the revolution. Have a great night, everybody.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
And it came to me then that every plan is a tiny prayer to Father Time. As I stared in my shoes in the ICU that reeked of piss and 409, and I rationed my breaths as I said to myself that I'd already taken too much today, as each descending peak on the LCD took you a little farther away from me, away from me. Amongst the vending machines and year-old magazines, in a place where we only say goodbye, it stung like a violent wind that our memories depend on a faulty camera in our minds. And I knew that you were truth I would rather lose than to have never lain beside it all. And I looked around at all the eyes on the ground as the TV entertained itself. 'Cause there's no comfort in the waiting room. Just nervous pacers bracing for bad news. And then the nurse comes round and everyone lifts their heads. But I'm thinking of what Sarah said, that love is watching someone die.